Good morning. We are on the crane side of the Liebherr booth. I'm with Jim Jatho in front of the brand new Liebherr LR1700-1.0. And he's going to walk us around the machine and point out some key features.
So I'll start with a phrase from our marketing department. The 1700 is the spiritual successor to the LR1600, but the capacity successor to the LR1750. And what that really means in Liebherr nomenclature, the LR1600 was a 600 metric ton crane that essentially were about the same footprint dimensions as the 1600, but we will match the capacity of the 750 metric ton crane, even though this is a 700 metric ton crane. So it's a really interesting crane because the 1600 and 1750 combined for over 400 units worldwide.
Wow.
So for this to fit right in that little niche, it's going to be a phenomenal crane.
Wow.
So some of the features, this was a very, very purpose-built wind machine. If you look up the boom, beyond the pivot section, for those who don't know, the pivot section is that first part that articulates. Beyond that, the boom sections expand out to 3.5 meters wide, and that's where it gets its strength. That really adds a lot of resistance against side-to-side turning that happens in the wind industry. But the taper sections are built in. Usually, in previous designs, the tapers would be separate, but beyond the tapers, it's actually LR1600 boom reused.
Oh, wow.
That's one of my favorite functions or features of this crane is we're actually reusing previous components from the LR1600 in a newer, stronger crane. The luffing jib for this crane, which is not, you can't see here, it's not installed, is actually entirely from the LR1600, but it'll still chart with the LR1750.
So reusing these components, these proven components from the 1600 must have not only expedited the development of this crane, but also must help R&D costs too.
And for our customers as well, who own 1600s from their previous fleet, who are looking to upgrade into the 1700. Just as an example, this, as I said, is a very purpose-built wind machine. The fixed jib for the wind work is rated 170 metric tons, whereas our original fixed jib for the LR1700 was only rated at 179.
Really?
It's been upgraded to 253, but for us to start with a 170 metric ton jib on this crane, is very, very.
Obviously, this is a much smaller crane than the 11,000.
By 300 metric tons, but still.
That's a lot.
Oh yes, absolutely. So what we have here is we have our derrick installed, which the derrick is only really for very heavy lift projects or extremely tall hub heights in wind turbines. And in addition, we have our BV frame.
Okay.
So what the BV frame will do is, in traditional derrick setups, the ballast tray is essentially just hanging from the derrick, and we change the angle of the derrick to change the radius of the ballast tray. Whereas here, the BV frame keeps the derrick at a fixed position and can pull the tray all the way into a minimum radius of 10.5 meters or push it beyond the capability of the derrick to 21 meters.
Wow.
With 375 metric tons of counterweight.
So this system, is this controlled by the operator or is this automated?
100% controlled by the operator.
Okay.
We don't want the crane to make any movements. The operator does not want it to do.
Okay, that makes sense.
Absolutely. So the operator is in control 100% of the time.
Okay.
Well, we take a look over here at the ballast tray. This is called the Vario tray. Okay. So essentially, what happens here is we can unpin this center section. This will take 160 metric tons of counterweight, and in scenarios where we're working at really high hub heights, 165 meters or more, we need all the counterweight on this tray just to get the boom off the ground.
Wow.
But once we're in the air and making actual lifts, we don't need nearly as much counterweight, so you can unpin this center section, and a skilled operator with proper pre-planning can keep this floating continuously.
Wow.
Yeah, essentially bring it in all the way to minimum radius when you don't have a load on the hook. When you're getting up on the load, push it back out and do the reverse when you're putting the load back down.
So that must really not only increase efficiency, safety, and wear and tear on the machine.
100% safety too.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said safety because essentially, they tend to build wind farms where it's windy.
Yes.
So what happens is if you're in the air and you have the small center tray, and the wind picks up to an unsafe degree where you need to boom the crane back down, you could just turn the crane, pin it back up to the main tray, and then just boom it right down without messing around with counterweight or anything like that.
So again, on safety, we've every machine we've talked to at the Liebherr booth, safety has been a paramount concern.
Absolutely.
Which is one thing I absolutely love about the company is safety is first no matter what.
Yes.
Even if it's expensive, safety is first.
So beyond just that, sort of a safety feature, on wind farms, we're walking these cranes between wind turbines. That's the way it's done in the United States. So there is a new version of the LR1700 coming out, which essentially the upper works, everything from that pivots, the slewing ring up is the same, but it's a narrow track version.
Okay.
So our narrow track was started with the LR1600, and what it essentially is imagine the tracks coming together so close that they're almost touching, but then where that slewing ring is, we have an additional cylinder sort of looking thing that has outriggers. So for narrow roads, ridgeline work, that sort of thing. But with the narrow track version, we have new heavy duty crawlers, as they're being called.
Okay.
Those will be able to be fit on this crane as well. And what you see here on this crane are 2.0 meter track pads. The heavy duty tracks will take 2.4 meter track pads.
Wow.
So walking between wind turbines on a wind farm, this with 2.4 meter track pads will match the ground bearing pressure of the LR1600 in a comparable configuration.
Wow,
so
that's
again,
impressive.
safety, paramount for us.
Wow. And I do just want to point out that I've never seen a slew ring that beefy. I've just never seen one like that before.
That's where the power comes from, essentially.
Yeah.
A relatively new feature for us is our auxiliary power unit.
Okay.
So that will preheat engine oil. Some of these wind farms are in very, very cold environments. This will also run the air conditioning in the cab and the heating in the cab, all the electronics. So the operator can switch back and forth between the main engine and the APU and not put engine hours on. Well,
and I'm sure that engine is also much more fuel efficient than the main engine.
Very much so. So cranes of this size, there's a lot of idle time.
Yeah, sure.
And you don't want to be putting hours on the main engine continuously when the operator is not actually making lifts. This prevents that.
Wow.
And so let's say you run through one of these APU units and it's hit its lifespan, significantly cheaper. I mean, I shouldn't even say significantly. Unimaginably cheaper than replacing
a fraction of the cost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that keeps our cranes more efficient.
Not only that, you have this externally mounted unit here, and on a crane, you have the trackpad sticking out this far, so that's not in a dangerous area.
No.
But now it's on the outside there, so that can just be lifted off as a unit, and a replacement can be fitted. So now that's an afternoon job instead of 3 days.
Exactly. Yes. Our centralized lubrication system. So basically, there's one of these on each crawler. There's one up in the front of the crane, just below the boom. But essentially, we have a centralized location. We just put the grease in here. It distributes on its own. We don't have to worry about each individual piece and pin and part. It's taken care of by the crane.
Wow.
We talked about safety a little bit.
Yep.
Every component has lifting instructions, lifting points, sling angles, with load ratings. So every component has been well thought out to be lifted and assembled in the safest, most efficient way possible, which is the reason this crane goes together as well as it does.
Yeah. So what is the approximate assembly time on this crane? Obviously, that's going to be different company to company, crew to crew, but...
Oh, absolutely. You could do 2 to 3 days, you could do 4 to 5 days, depending on what kind of configuration you're looking at.
That's very impressive for a crane of this size.
Absolutely, and I should say that this ballast tray, as we saw it, it's not fully stacked out. That could take 36 of our 10 metric ton weights. That we've got 16 back there, so it's
half capacity.
So there's a lot of components to this crane that are not here, just because for efficiency for the show. As an example, this main boom is actually a very, very short main boom configuration for wind. That's 78 meters of main and 12 meters of fixed jib. We can do up to 165 meters of main and 18 meters of fixed jib in that scenario. So this is about half of what you would really actually do on a job site.
Wow.
So one of the things we talked about as we've walked around this crane is safety is paramount, obviously. The entire crane has catwalks, guardrails, everything in place for easy access to every part of the crane without anyone walking in a perilous kind of way.
This is by far the largest crane I've ever been on, but I also feel the safest on this crane with, like you said, all the guardrails, the handholds, and nothing feels unsturdy. I don't feel like I'm about to fall off.
No. It's almost like a small building.
Yeah, it is.
So sometimes, to me, this is the most exciting part of the crane. If you want to come in here and take a look, it's almost like an airplane. When people see the control systems behind this, it's really pretty incredible. The operator has complete access to all information at all times. And one of the great things about Liebherr is our Lycon control system runs in the crane, but it can also be run on a computer as well. So I can pull out my laptop and plan a job and see exactly what the crane is going to do. And the operator will see the same thing when he actually executes the lift. Again, safety being paramount, we have cameras all around this crane. The operator can switch between cameras and see what's going on with the ballast tray, with the winches, and really get a full idea without having to crane his neck around and check things out. So again, safety, comfort for the operator is crucial. So again, as we talked about before with the safety features, every single component has a layout of how to lift it in what configuration and what conditions. If you're lifting the superstructure with one crane, two cranes, winches removed, winches in place, we have different options, and it's always detailed right on the crane, so there's no room for field error. So now we're up on the superstructure. As I mentioned before, while we were sitting in the cab, we've got cameras to monitor the winches, cameras to monitor the ballast tray, so the operator always knows what's going on. These winches, as you see right here, just a quick pin. We've got efficient lifting points for removal, easy access compartments for the engine, additional safety guardrails, walking paths for the counterweight during the assembly process, and this machine was very, very well thought out to be put together as efficiently as possible.
I can see it's very modular, like you were talking about with the winch packs here. They're just pinned in, and obviously you won't have the boom in place when you're dealing with the winches, so they can just be lifted straight out.
Absolutely.
All right, thanks Jim for showing me around the crane. I'm going to just ask you one final question, and what is your favorite feature on this beautiful crane behind us here?
I think my favorite feature is Liebherr taking the first steps into interchangeability of components between crane models. As we mentioned before, LR1700 boom, LR1600 luffing jib, LR1600 winches. All our customers who own those cranes in their fleet can now purchase a crane like this and use those old components, then can go into this crane even though it's a significantly higher capacity machine.
Yeah, that's great for versatility, because a company that's going to be buying this crane is most likely not going to be the only crane in their fleet.
No.
So that's huge for them.
Absolutely.
And I really appreciate your time, and it was great talking to you and getting to know you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.